It's Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about day one of the Switch 2. All right, you said you had some opening bit.
Okay, I got plenty. Oh, we did so much action this weekend. So much action. So, we had people to come over for a Switch 2 party on Saturday.
Yep, it was a good time.
We'll discuss what went on there in the main bit, but we also took a little break to enjoy my upgraded NES.
Yep, I was feeling really good after the second period in that game of ice hockey, and now I feel like the New York Rangers.
I don't know, how do you agree that a real NES is somehow feels different?
It definitely feels different in ways I struggle to articulate, but I also don't know if it's the same phenomenon where if I know...
Well, it's not a double-blind test, so it's like...
I was about to say, if I know the bottle of wine is of a certain provenance, will I perceive it differently?
Exactly. How about the wireless controller, though?
You know what did stand out to me, though? Because when I was a kid, I remember adults, like my whole family would play video games, like all the adults, all the kids. But the adults would complain about their hands hurting, and I remember laughing at them and thinking that was stupid. And boy, did I have a sports injury by the end of the second period of that game, and I feel like that contributed to my downfall.
Yeah, the NES controller is not great on the hands, but it is great if that's all the game needs.
It's just very telling that it didn't hurt until I was in my 40s, and now it hurts to use that controller.
I think it only hurts in a game where there's some sort of, like, we're mashing in ice hockey, right? If you're playing Mario 3, it's like you can go really far.
True. I think it's partly that I'm really, there's a high APM when I'm trying to win a competitive game, and that game does require...
Yeah. But yesterday, it was rainy and I wasn't working. So I went to see 2 movies in one day, which I don't even remember the last time I did that.
Oh yeah, I still got to go get a ticket to see Wes Anderson's new thing.
Have I done that? I don't know. Is that the first time? It can't be the first time, but it's extremely rare. But yeah, I went to the movie theater to watch 2 movies in one day. And so yet again, I found myself going to the fancy Lincoln Square AMC that the nerds prefer because the closer theater was is renovating and most of the screens are not open, so they don't have enough showings there. So it only worked if I went to the fancy one. So I saw The Phoenician Scheme. It was a scheme. It's a Wes Anderson movie. It was good. I enjoyed it.
That's all you need to tell me to get me excited about that movie was there's a scheme and it's a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah. I think the trailer has you thinking the scheme is like the focus of the movie, but the scheme is more like this backdrop, and the movie's actually about, like parents who, feel bad that they didn't, raise their kids and then sent them off, and then...
Well, also, Wes Anderson layered movies. The Asteroid City wasn't about aliens, nor was it about the movie that was being made. It was about a bunch of those things.
And then I went to lunch, and then after lunch, I went to see the ballerina, the John Wick one, the new one. And, it's a spinoff, right, which is how they do to make the money grabs, right? And so this was not in the IMAX theater, because not an IMAX movie. It was in the Dolby Cinema, because it's like that Lincoln Center AMC is fancy, right? So the Phoenician Scheme was just in a regular theater, but the ballerina was in the Dolby Cinema, theater number 1, right? Which I hadn't been in before. And basically it was a normal theater, but it had, reclining chair, which is nice. And it had, a ridiculous sound system, which is, I guess, the point. And it was like in that movie, I think the biggest difference it made in the movie was that there were so many scenes in which somebody was slammed on the ground, right? In the action scenes, like a body slam or falling and landing or something like that. And every time someone landed on the ground, they had put a thud sound, in the audio of the film, obviously, but you could feel the thud in the floor of the theater.
I like that.
But it made me pay special attention to how many times someone landed on the ground with force. But I guess the only notable things about that movie is, number one, usually spin-offs are like subpar compared to, like, you know, when you have a franchise, right? The core things are good and the spin-offs are usually meh. In this case, despite it being a spin-off, it was just as good as other John Wick movies.
Yeah, which
you know,
I mean, I would say John Wick movies are not the peak of cinema, but they are solid A movies that I've enjoyed start to finish with.
I would say B+.
A minus maybe.
I like the second and third ones more than the
Yeah, I mean, I still like, well, I actually like the first one the most, but the second one did a few really specific things I liked that I think we talked about on GeekNights a long time ago, so I won't repeat myself.
But anyway, the point is that this one, it's a, despite being a spin-off, it is on par with its main, which is, you know, interesting and of note. Mm-hmm. And also, you think, oh, Keanu Reeves is going to show up in it like for 2 seconds, and it's like, actually, he showed up in it for more like a few minutes. You know, I thought he wouldn't, like, barely appear, but actually he appeared somewhat. And then what was the other thing about it that was noteworthy? Oh, Lance Reddick, who died, rest in peace. I was like, I saw him on the poster for the movie, and I was like, didn't he die? Like, how was he in this movie? He was in the movie very briefly, and I presume that scene was filmed prior to his. It didn't look like it was CG.
Yeah, not that weird, that really bad Grand Moff Tarkin that we all had to witness.
I could be wrong because computers have come a long way, but it looked like it was just something that was filmed long ago. From what I could tell, someone else who knows the behind the scenes can get the real info, but it was only like one scene, so that's why. Yeah, and then I guess we'll never see him again.
Yeah. And all I did, because some of our friends, you got a household where 2 people are down due to injury or difficulty, and we're helping them out, like walking dogs and such. But I did an experiment, and because, I do my super long runs every weekend anyway, like that's a big part of my life. So I ran out to Flushing, and I've done this twice now. And you know what? That's actually a really, really pleasant run. However, it reminded me, I love a lot of things about Flushing. It is shockingly hard to walk down any of the main streets in Flushing at any time of day.
You got Main Street and you got Roosevelt, and yeah, they're crowded full of people.
Yep. But they're crowded to a degree that like Midtown never gets, even during like the rush hour.
Properly designed in a proper design, those would not be streets you could put a car on.
Oh yeah, I mean, can you imagine what Flushing would be like if that entire area was just a pedestrian plaza?
Yeah. It really should be. Why would you need to drive your car on Flushing Main Street, like in front of that Macy's over there? There's no reason.
It's like in Seattle. Why, for the love of fuck, do they let anyone drive right next to the Pike Place Market on that cobblestone?
Right. It's like if you're driving in that area, it's like you're driving through, right? It's like you're dropping someone off. You could just drop someone off like a block away. It's like, you could turn it. They should shrink that. Get rid of all cars, maybe bus lanes only, because then the buses would go speed through there. But anyway,
but yeah,
the sidewalks are not wide enough for the number of people who walk over there.
Yeah, but it is an interesting and pleasant run. Partly because I run through areas that I would normally never bike in, because I hate biking out there. But 2, I end up running through neighborhoods in like by LaGuardia that I would never otherwise enter.
You took a way northern path.
Oh yeah, it's only, so it's like 7 miles if I ran directly, like the shortest path. It's like 12, 13 miles if I go all the way up to the top and run along the water and run through all those like weird dead end neighborhood streets along the way. It's there's stuff up there. There's some really fun parks, but there's a little park I don't think a lot of people know about. It's tiny. And it's next to LaGuardia, but it's basically just on this little cliff overlooking the airport. And the planes fly basically right over it. And as I ran through it, there were multiple families sitting there having picnics. And every time a plane took off, the kids lost their shit. And that was very charming to behold.
Okay.
All right, I guess we get into it. We got some news. So I got a little news. But there's a non-zero chance. I'm not saying it's a high chance, but it is a non-zero chance now that I will someday play at least some minutes worth of Fortnite with Scott, because the Switch 2, of course, you can play Fortnite on the Switch 2. The only problem with that, historically, has been that controllers are the worst possible way to control an FPS. Scientifically, objectively true. And because the Switch 2 controllers can be used as mice, and as Scott and I have determined, the mousing is way better than I expected it to be. It is now confirmed Fortnite will actively support the mouse controls on the Switch 2.
I mean, this is what I said before.
Yeah. Well, it's confirmed as of June 4th. They had not confirmed that they would use it like a mouse, and there was a lot.
Come on, there was no way they weren't going to do this.
Oh, obviously, but now it's official. So we should play some Fortnite. Fortnite remains actually one of my favorite.
I have to have an Epic account, which I don't even have.
Yeah, but your objection before.
I have a Steam account that's as old as Steam itself, and I have no Epic account.
My Steam account is like a week younger than yours, but maybe 2 weeks. But the difference was your objection was not having an Epic account. Your objection was refusing to install the Epic app on your PC.
Yeah,
I have that. I have that recorded.
Yeah, that is still my objection. But actually, if I erase this, because now I'm using, an Apple computer for quite a while now. I'm going to delay getting a new gaming PC as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, at least wait for like a 6080.
The Switch 2 is really going to help with that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do eventually get it, it'll be probably a computer that only does gaming and nothing else, in which case...
Install every game launcher, because who cares?
There wouldn't be a problem installing the Epic Store on it, because there wouldn't be any other things on there except games. So,
yep. I've still literally never launched any game through the Epic launcher except Fortnite, just like I've never launched any Blizzard game through Battle.net except Overwatch.
Yeah. At WWDC, Apple announced they're replacing the Game Center, which of course is long maligned and neglected, and now they're making like an Apple Games app that will sort of centrally launch games. We'll see how it actually ends up working.
Yeah.
Anyway,
got some news.
So, something I've long asked for years and years, and is to have a sports game in which, any sport, any team sport, in which every player in the game, and perhaps if you want to go really far, even coaches and other staff, but players is enough, is controlled by one human. So an ice hockey game where you have 12 humans and each person only controls the one, one person's just a goalie and they just sit there the whole, one person's just, a center. And okay, in hockey you have to change lines, and I guess if you swap out, you would then just swap your player, but I'm not asking for 20 people.
We could have 6 people playing hockey. We don't need to have an entire hockey team playing hockey.
NFL football, you could have Madden, and you could have all one person's the quarterback and one person's just playing offensive lineman the game,
Yep.
And the only game that I know of that ever really delivered on this is Rocket League.
I was about to say Rocket League is the literal only game I can think of.
Right. And there is an NBA game that does it. That's 5-on-5, but it's basically pay to win garbage.
Yeah.
There may be other games that do it I don't know of, but they're not like real. There might be I think I've seen like some cute little games.
Scott has not heard of them. They're definitely not good.
Anyway, somebody is coming out with something along these lines after how many decades of video games existing and multiplayer games existing.
That somebody is Slow Clap.
Yeah, this idea could have been executed on as far back as like the Quake 1 days, right? It's like nothing stopped anyone from making the game that I envisioned in 1999.
Now, there were games where every player, like Quake, arguably is this if deathmatch is a sport, but they never applied it to like a real sport. A sport that already existed, a traditional sport.
There's a game. I'm in the playtest for it, though I have not purchased it. I didn't even do the playtest. I'm just in the playtest. I clicked in Steam. There was like a button that was like, do you want to join the playtest? And I just clicked the button, and immediately it said, you're in. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't download it, install it, or play it.
I clicked it just now live on the stream. Welcome to the playtest.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, at June 19th, the game will be released. It's called Rematch, and I assume I will be kicked out of the playtest and unable to play at that point if I don't pay the money to buy the game. As far as I can tell, there is no pay to win. They're following the standard model of cosmetic junk that you can probably pay for. Who knows if there's loot boxes or whatever? I don't know. But there is no pay to win. That's what they say. You do have to pay $30 just to get the game. It is a soccer game, but the one disappointing thing about it is that it is 5-on-5. But while I don't care about soccer, I
am more likely to find, you and me will find 3 more people much more readily than we will find an entire soccer team to play this game with us.
Sure. Well, Rocket League is only 3-on-3. Now, the thing about this is, even though I don't care about soccer at all, this appeals because, like I said, no pay to win. But the reason I played Rocket League a bunch, but the reason I didn't stick with it is because, I'm going to be honest, skill issue.
Scott and I are both like so fucking bad at Rocket League when we tried to play it, even when we tried to be good.
If there was a Rocket League, league where nobody could do aerial shit, it was just ground game, and I would
like all NHL hockey, not allowed to lift the puck.
Right. It's I was really good, but if there was anyone who could actually go up into the air and meet the ball midair or do any of that stuff, I practiced, I did trainings, I did tutorials, I watched YouTube videos, and I was unable to execute those techniques.
Actually, you'll never play it.
Practice and effort that I had was
you'll never play it. But what you are describing does exist. There is a game mode in Overwatch that's moderately popular, and I was crazy good at it. I was diamond, literally, I was ranked diamond. That is there aren't many ranks higher than that in that game, though, legitimately. But it was called Lucio Ball, and it was just Rocket League, but there's no air.
Okay. Well, Rematch seems to probably also be Rocket League with no air, but 5-on-5, and it looks as a soccer theme. And so, am I going to pay $30? Well, I have until June 19th. I have 9 days to try the playtest and see if
I'll try the playtest with you.
But if I'm going to do $30, it has to be something I'm really going to invest in. I would much rather it be a different sport than soccer. I would much rather it be 11-on-11, make it like the actual sport.
What do I want? What do I want? I want hockey.
So few games have executed on this concept, even attempted in all this time. I got to give credit to when someone actually does it and give them a shot. So
yep, we'll see if it is actually fun. But I feel like the concept would be fun for the sports that are fun to play. Case in point, I don't like watching soccer, but you know what I really liked as a kid? Playing soccer. I didn't care what position I played. I was out losing. I didn't give a shit either. It was just fun to play. Baseball.
Yeah, basketball. I don't enjoy watching basketball. Basketball is actually probably the best sport to play.
Yeah.
Right.
Scott, we can go play some basketball.
I would rather play basketball than ice hockey.
You want to go?
Even if I was good at ice skating, I'd rather play basketball than ice hockey.
I bet Emily would be down with this too. We could do there's a format I used to play basketball with my brother, our friends when I was a kid, because it's very hard to get enough people to play a half court game, even though we had a basketball.
In New York City, it's no problem finding people to play with.
But a format we'd often play if we had 3 people would be 2 offense, 1 defense, and you just rotate.
Yeah, and when it comes to basketball, I can dribble normally, but if any fancy dribble, cannot do, right? I cannot dodge or evade. I cannot handle if there's any defense in the way. I probably can't do anything.
I don't know if I can still do it. I could easily get past people by doing a little spin, because kind of like when everyone's bad at Soul Calibur and people lose to Raphael because they don't just internalize, they can step to the side and he's powerless.
If there is no defense, or I have somehow evaded the terrible defense, my shot is okay for a normal schmo. It's not actually a good shot on the level of all basketball players, but that qualifies
schmoes. So hockey. When I played hockey as a kid, roller hockey or ice hockey, I was a good shot if and only if nobody was harassing me whatsoever, and I can just take my shot. I was a great shot. I could hit the corners pretty reliably.
I am somewhat confident in free throws.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So one last tiny news. Blade 68. So, I played Blades in the Dark is the only role-playing system other than Dungeons & Dragons 2nd and 3rd edition that I have fully played, meaning I've used all the mechanics, or at least a super majority of the mechanics, played all through all the levels at least once. Like, I've played up to, like, high teens levels of D&D 2nd ed and 3rd ed. Blades in the Dark is the only other system I've done that. So, Blades 68 is the sequel or expansion to Blades in the Dark. It is a different system, but the playtest of it is fully done. I participated in that playtest. The game will come out at some point. Like the playtest was basically just finalizing it. And I just want to say that Blades 68 is one of the best designed role-playing games I have fully internalized the rules to.
Now, obviously, Blade 68 has a different theme than the regular Blades because it takes place in 1968-ish world, whereas the other one is an 1800s kind of world.
Yep,
right?
it's basically like early, like late 17 to early 1800s. Like railroads have appeared, but they're not that great yet. You know, it's that level of technology.
1968. This is like very recent.
Yeah,
relatively speaking.
I would advise if you are looking for a role-playing system to play, and you want to try something that's not D&D, and you haven't tried Blades in the Dark, I would recommend when Blade 68 comes out, just get it and play it.
A game about crimes.
Well, do you want to play a game about heist-style crimes?
Yeah, if you don't want to, if that's not what your game's about, obviously it doesn't matter how good
vaguely in the context of a fantasy Cold War.
Yeah.
If you want to play
is
The Man from U.N.C.L.E. in a slightly fantasy world, and you want to play a game where the game master doesn't have to prepare that much, and the players also don't have to prepare that much, but unlike most of the short RPGs Scott and I like to talk about, it is set up to do a full multi-year campaign with a group if you really wanted to. Right. I think it's the best one to play. Based on the playtest, this game is fucking phenomenal.
That many? How many have you played?
RPGs long form? Not that many.
Right, so it's like you're comparing it to that many. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying you have that many things to compare it to.
Oh, yeah, no, I qualified it all.
Is if there are these systemic improvements to Blades 68, should they not like just update regular Blades?
So that is actually a very good question.
Improvements that you could then just use either setting if you want to go early or late time.
That is a very good question, and I would actually say a very small number of the system improvements should be ported back because they are just good ideas. Most of them actually make the game play out differently and make it fit better into a more futuristic Cold War style. A good example is the system is designed in the Blade 68. It will cause political ramifications of your actions, and you are more encouraged by the mechanics, not the story, not the setting, the mechanics, to not just be criminals trying to get a bunch of money and retire, but to give a shit. And to like, you want something, you're trying to make the world better or worse, you might be a piece of shit, in a way where the old Blades in the Dark is much more zoomed in, and the mechanical changes, the differences between the two, encourage a very different feeling. To just explain what I mean would require a lot of talking that we don't have time for, but I would say the system, this is why I'm so excited about this game. Minor mechanical changes to the system actually caused the game to feel more like a Mission Impossible Cold War like role-playing experience, even if the players don't realize it. That is some genius level game design right there, that the mechanics cause the role-playing. So I think they should remain very distinct systems. There are vanishingly small things that I will bring into my Blades in the Dark game from this. Everything else I'm going to leave here.
Okay. Anyway,
give me a second. Move my little markers around. Things of the day. So this video feels like a GeekNights kind of panel in that it's 56 minutes long and it's a nerd talking about a topic at about the level of depth that Scott and I talk about, like when we do a PAX panel. Like, it's about that level of analysis and depth. But this individual, Pinholes Graham Hockey, they have gone into the history and game design of the neutral zone trap in ice hockey from the beginning of hockey to the present day. This video goes into like details of all the different variants of the trap, how they work, how they're countered, what it did to the league, what it did to teams, what it did to the meta, what it did to spectators. This video is fantastic. But the second reason I'm making it my thing of the day is the style of the slides effectively in this discussion is a style I kind of want to steal. I like the aesthetics of this talk, and if you watch it, you'll see. The third reason I'm interested in it is that one of the lectures Scott and I are submitting to PAX West, can't say this is the one we'll do, is about the intersection of game design and, instead of players, what about spectators? Like, how does game design impact spectators? How do you design games with spectators in mind? Like, that whole space. And this talk gets pretty deep into one of the primary problems with the neutral zone trap is that it is a very effective.
Spectators, awful.
Yep. Imagine
like
taking the most fun game in the world.
Spectators.
Like, what would be an example?
Unwatchable.
Imagine if in basketball you could just stand under the net, and if someone's about to shoot, just stick your hand up through the net and push the ball out, and that was legal.
They have a rule, goaltending.
Yeah, they made a rule
sort of
because it literally makes basketball
they also have a
unwatchable.
shot clock to also make it.
Yep. The neutral zone trap is like the best possible strategy at ice hockey and also the worst possible thing to happen to ice hockey short of actual injuries to humans.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in this talk, but I'm actually going to reach out to them because I want to cite this video in that panel if we do that panel at PAX West. Anyway, what do you got?
All right. So I've been playing with a lot of digital electronic musical instruments of various kinds.
I'm surprised you made this the thing of the day because I now have a link to it.
Yeah, this one you can have. Anyway. It's free. I can't stop you. And one thing I've noticed is that many different digital musical instruments or electronic musical instruments are the same thing or very much overlap with each other in terms of functionality, but they're all basically different user interfaces for these, the core musical, the concept of music is the same everywhere.
Yep. It's sound waves.
And it's just lots of different user interfaces on the same sort of thing, and people sort of choose what matches the user interface that goes with their workflow and their creative ideas. And so this is a really interesting one that caught my attention. It's called Droneboy. It's a Game Boy ROM, and you can play the 4 voices of the original Game Boy, and there are already tons of programs that let you make music on a regular old Game Boy, and most of them are following the concept of what's known as a tracker, right? Which is a particular user interface for sort of a sequencer where you're basically, it goes vertically and you put, notes and effects and instruments and everything on, these vertical lines. And as the bar falls down, it hits each, right? There's one column per voice on the synthesizer that's inside whatever chip you have, and then it just switches as you go down. In this case, it's really interesting. This Droneboy, it's basically almost everything but the sequencer, even though there is like a chord thing that has some sequencing, and to where basically all the voices, whatever you set them to, it's like they just keep playing to make droning music specifically.
Just poking at it a little bit, it immediately gives me that feeling of ominous music in old video game.
Right. So it's sort of like, usually you're going to be, choosing notes, whereas here, and the notes change over time to make some sort of melody. That's music. Whereas here, it's like you have the 4 voices of the Game Boy, and you can set each one to do all of its parameters to change whatever it is that it's going to play. But it's like whatever you set it to, it sort of stays on that, and you can manually adjust like the mixer to turn them on and off in somewhat, right? But it's not like a tracker where, you have a sequence of notes and it goes, and a melody. So by using this particular interface can guide you to play the same instrument, the Game Boy. It's a musical instrument. It's actually more of like a 4-piece band, but regardless, to play that 4-piece instrument in a particular way to make a certain kind of music because the interface is different.
It's really cool. And you could theoretically put this on something and run it on a real Game Boy.
Yeah, it's a Game Boy ROM.
Yeah.
So you can put it in an emulator or you can put it on a Game Boy.
In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, Everything for Everyone, Oral History of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. I think we'll do this at the end of the month. I think that's an easy...
reading it steadily. It is actually not as long as I thought it was going to be. I forget what percent. I think I was like 20 or 30%, something like that.
Yep, and I'm going to be in Germany and London all next week, so I will have ample time to finish this book. We'll have a lot to say about it, I think, considering the state of the world that we live in right now. Otherwise, we will very likely... I bought my plane tickets for PAX West, so if you're planning to go to PAX West, get your badges. Like, be ready for that. I think that's all I got. No more meta right now. All right. So the Switch 2 came out, and we poked at it. Scott has one. Scott was able to acquire one for me as well, so we both have Switches. And I think we can do a little bit of a sort of day one dive. There's really only 2 games that are exclusive to this that we have touched.
Yep. So on the one hand, it's like, hey, do you need a Switch 2 if you have a Switch 1? No, you don't.
Yeah.
At the present time, there's almost no games, almost none, that you need that are Switch 2 exclusive. And so why would you shell out the money for one of the Switch 2s? Right now, not much valid reason to do so.
Yep.
Right?
Other than if you're going to get one anyway, it's not going to get cheaper.
Yeah. You really want to play Mario Kart World super badly. I don't know.
Yeah. I like Mario Kart World okay.
Game is coming out. There are people who are DK fanatics out there who need that, right? But yeah, until more games come out that are exclusive, which will happen, the reasons to get the Switch 2 are small. That said, the Switch 2, in ways I did not appreciate, right? So back in the day, the biggest comparison I can make is that there was the 3DS, right? The original 3DS.
Yep.
Then there was the 3DS XL. There were so many different 3DS versions, the 3DSi, right? And eventually, I think a lot of people forget, I was actually reminded recently, I had forgotten, there was at some point a new 3DS. There was actually a console called New 3DS. There were almost no exclusive games for it. There's like a handful, all right? And when it came out, I was like, why should I buy that? I have 3DS XL. That's not... It's like, yeah, it's got some nice upgrades, but like, who cares, right? But now, if I go and I look at 3DSs, right, as a thing to get now, those upgrades on the new 3DS, it's like, oh, that's actually the nicest 3DS by some significance. It's like it has this camera that actually makes the 3D effect like a lot better, and it's faster loading. And if you're gonna hack it, it's way better to hack a new 3DS than a regular 3DS. And they're actually somewhat expensive to get because of the demand for those.
Now somehow they did sell 94 million of them.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 9.94 million.
Yeah, 94 million would be insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Switch 2, if you look at it and actually use it, it's like, oh, it's a Switch, but it's just a lot nicer in so many ways than the regular Switch. It's been like, it's just upgraded and just so much better, and there's no reason now to have a Switch 1. If you don't have any Switch at all, don't buy a Switch 1. The
Absolutely
Switch 2
not.
It's just the same thing, way better.
Yep. So what stood out
are better,
immediately,
the screen is better,
the controllers
times are better.
The fact that the side controllers magnet on and off is very pleasant compared to the slide in and out.
Yeah, it's so much. It's like you didn't appreciate how much better the magneting is until you actually do it, and it's like, oh, now the sliding is just terrible.
Oh, I was futzing with our old Switch because I'm rearranging like what's plugged into the TV with the docks and everything, and I took one of the controllers off the side, and it just felt like poison compared to the Switch 2.
Yeah. So some games did get a real upgrade to where, like, even though there's Switch 1 games, there's upgrade packs and they run at higher resolution or higher frame rates and whatever. So other games did not. But so, for example, I'm almost done with Mario Brothership, which is, I think I said, kind of an okay kind of game, right? But it was really crushed by loading times. Playing the same exact game on Switch 2. It doesn't run in 4K. It doesn't run at 120 FPS. There was no upgrade pack for it. The loading times are significantly improved if you play on a Switch 2, and that actually like upgrades the game like a whole point of tolerableness. I don't think if I didn't get a Switch 2, I don't know if I would finish that game because the loading times are so bad. On Switch 2, the loading times are like, I barely notice them. It's a huge improvement. It makes the game way more playable. And that applies to lots of games across the board.
The other thing that really stands out is that, you know, the screen on it, like the screen on the Switch itself, if it looks amazing, and if you hold it next to an original Switch, it really, really shows. This is a very high quality display.
Well, you're comparing a screen. So the original Switch, first of all, you don't have a Switch OLED. So
nope.
An OLED Switch, I think, in terms of the visual quality,
probably similar.
Yeah. So the new Switch 2, the screen is bigger. The old Switch, smaller, obviously, but the old Switch was, I think, 720p, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. The Switch 2 is 1080p.
Yep.
The OLED Switch is OLED, so there is that with the high contrast and whatnot. The Switch 2 is LCD, but LCD has come a long way. You know, even in televisions, a lot of the higher end LCDs are, you know, have a lot better contrast. It's not like the olden days. You know, it's not quite OLED level, but it's like really good. It is HDR as well. So, and the other thing is that the Switch 2 is 120 FPS on the built-in screen, which is terrific. Now, the downside, I think that the one thing about the Switch 2 that's kind of annoying is that if you plug it into the dock, into a television, and you have, like me, a very fancy television, my TV can do 4K 120. It's a fancy TV. And so I would like to be able to do 4K 120 on that TV because I paid for this TV that can do that.
Yeah, but 4K 120 is very intensive to generate in a computing device.
Indeed. So the Switch 2 can do 120. It can do 4K if you plug it into a TV that can do 4K. It can't do 4K on its built-in screen because that's only a 1080p screen.
Yep.
It cannot do 4K 120. You have to choose between the two. So I think most of the time you're going to leave it in 4K mode because you can't really tell the difference. But there may be some games where you want to manually go and say, all right, for this game, I need to go down to 1080 120 because...
Though, at the same time, like doing that test, playing it, like looking at it, I was often incorrect between 60 and 120.
Yeah, so this is something to talk about, is that people have been talking about this $10 tutorial, the Switch Gallery, whatever it's called.
It's worth getting. Like it's
the Welcome Center.
It's a first party, like Nintendo made it. It's a $10 like museum tour of the Switch. It's pretty impressive, honestly.
Yeah, the Switch 2 Welcome Tour is $10. And when you first heard about this, I was like, $10 tutorial, right? This is actually... I think I'm gonna say it's worth the $10. If you have a Switch 2, you should pay the $10 and go through and you should 100% this thing. Maybe not all the mini games because some of them are very, very challenging, which is surprising.
The mouse click at the extreme end, yeah, that's not happening with that mouse.
Yeah. But all the other non-mini game parts, all the demos and all the exhibits that you just read, you should go through absolutely all of it because it's actually sort of surprising. They go over everything there is to know about the Switch 2, right? And I think it's somewhat of an ingenious thing they've done here. It's like, yeah, not everyone is going to do this because it's $10, and kids probably aren't going to do this because it's boring. But someone who actually cares, anyone with any amount of nerdiness who would pay $10, if you paid the $10, you're going to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wasted your money.
But imagine if we were kids and there was this for $10 on the Super Nintendo that took you through like all the architecture and design of the Super Nintendo. I would have been into that as a kid.
Right. They show you everything, like how the buttons work. They take you inside. They show you all the chips and everything. It's like, you know, it used to be that like, yeah, the inside of the console was viewed as some kind of secret and you would only have to go on, you know, YouTube and find someone who's going to open theirs up and show, and right. But it's like Nintendo's like, you know what? In the year 2025, people are opening these. We're just going to be the one to tell you. And what they're really doing is, on the one hand, they really want you, the user, to understand the thing you've bought so you can fully appreciate, right, what, and use it properly and understand how to get the most out of it.
Now, how long has GeekNights complained about the lack of proper manuals to pieces of technology that used to exist? Computers used to come with these giant books. This is that for the Switch.
They're also teaching you a Nintendo history to a large extent, like how they've come, right? So it's like, hey, here's the camera. Here's all our past cameras. This is how we've arrived at this, right? Here's our sticks. Here's the history of all the sticks we've made. This is how we've arrived at the design of this stick.
There's the bit of also hey, you notice there's a gap between the controller and the Switch. Well, here's why we put that gap there.
Yep. And they're sort of bragging also, because, Nintendo, how they polish the heck out of all their designs, and that's what sort of gives Nintendo games and products, their appeal. They're actually sort of bragging and sort of making sure that, like, you understand the polish that they've put into the design. And they're like, see how much we polish this? Like, look at how great we are. And now, you feel, I guess, better about the thing you've bought, and because you understand it and value, right?
What stood out the most, you would not have appreciated, I think, any player, this new rumble that they've got if they did not have this demo. Those maracas are miraculous technology.
There's HD Rumble 2, and it's like I didn't appreciate how good HD Rumble 2 was. How I didn't even know that it was a thing, but it's like Nintendo's like, yeah, look at how we've gone with Rumble through our history, and this is our latest version of Rumble. Let us show you how advanced it is compared to all other Rumble on the market. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's the best Rumble that's ever been in any video game controller. And it's like, well, the Switch 2 Pro controller doesn't have Hall effect sticks, but are the third-party controllers going to have HD Rumble 2? And are games going to make use of HD Rumble 2? And is it worth it? It's like, it makes you think about getting the Switch Pro controller too.
But I got 3 Switch Pro controller ones.
I only have 1. And so yeah, there's, I think it's a very much upgraded and better Switch, and therefore the Switch 2 name, originally I wanted them to call it Super Switch, which I think still would have been a good name, but the Switch 2 name I think is appropriate because it just is the same thing, just significantly more polished in all the areas, like every area, basically.
And in terms of the only real exclusive game that's out now, Mario World, we'll probably do Mario World, Super Mario Kart World.
Kart World.
Yeah. It's all right, is what I would say.
Yeah, it's Mario Kart, right? I think in everything there is about Mario Kart, it's an improvement, right? But it's great. The free roam mode is great, and the
free roam mode was surprisingly more engaging than I expected. Like, even at your party, like I poked at it a little bit, and the next thing I know, I'm looking for those P blocks, and everyone else is like, "Oh, I think there's one there. Oh, what's that pirate ship? Go get the pirate ship!" Like it evoked those feelings of sitting on the couch and one person's playing a game and everyone else is invested. It's a good sign for the direction Nintendo's going, but the Mario Kart racing itself feels like it's testing a different skill set than previous Mario Karts.
Yeah, I think what they've done is, because they support so many more players than previous Mario Karts at racers in one race. That's exciting, having a race with just a ton of cars all at once, right? But they made the tracks wide. Even Rainbow Road is wide, right? And so the tracks are much more forgiving. If you're bad at driving, you won't fall off. Like in previous Mario Karts, there was sort of this bar where it's like, you have to be at least this good at Mario Kart to stay on the track. If you can't stay on the track with your level of skill, you're going to fall off and lose no matter what items you get or whatever, right? And so even though it was still a game about luck and items and not entirely about driving skill, there was this bar of people who can stay on the track and people who can't.
Yep.
Now the track is so wide and so forgiving, everyone can stay on the track if you're just know how to use a controller.
Yep. So the game
And
becomes
so-
more about interacting with the items, like dodging shells, using shells, and also about getting the coins on this wide track.
The coins matter a bit, but maybe less and more in some different ways, but they do matter. But yeah, because the track is so wide, there aren't really as many ways. They did add some things like the ability to, in certain spots, to drive on the walls or drive on rails to go a little faster.
I kept forgetting to do it.
Yeah, but even if you find all those spots and find all these shortcuts and things like that, there's a lot of track that's just big, wide track where you drive straight for a while. And so when you're just driving straight for a while on a track, there isn't really any opportunity to use your driving skills to go faster and create a gap between you and anyone behind you. Because, Mario Kart, like I keep saying, this Super Circuit was the one where skill mattered. You could even dodge the blue shell with perfect driving, right? That was the only one that ever did that. So all the Mario Karts after that, there wasn't really, items sort of still ruled the day. But even though items ruled the day, if you could drive well, you could create a gap such that you could survive a blue shell or even two, depending on how big the gap was. In Mario Kart World, there is not a lot of opportunity to build a gap between you and anyone else.
That might, one thing that could change, this feels like a game where more tracks are going to appear.
Oh yeah, they're going to have DLCs with more tracks, just like they did for the other Mario Kart, right?
Yep.
But yeah, at the place it is now, there are not a lot of opportunities to use driving skill to create a lead. And so any race that has a lot of players in it really comes down to the items on the last lap. If you get hit with the shell like near the end of the final lap, it's like you're just hosed. Whereas before, in older Mario Karts, if that happened, that would be okay because I had so much of a lead by then I had built up over the course of the race. Now you can't build up. There's no opportunities to do that.
Now,
but yeah,
if you already have a Switch, you're like Scott said, you're under no urgency to get the Switch 2, but they're not that hard to get.
You might have a bunch of money though.
Yeah.
So,
but
are you going to use the Switch 2?
What they've done that's very nice, if you're using your Switch a lot, you might as well just get the Switch 2 because it's such a nicer piece of hardware.
It's so better.
It does the same thing that like an iPhone does, where when you buy it, if you already have a Switch, when you're setting it up, it'll ask you like, hey, do you already have a Switch? And log in and put them next to each other, and it'll just automatically like set up your new Switch to be your Switch 2 to be your primary with all your games there. It even automatically makes sure your Animal Crossing World properly works on the new Switch instead of the old Switch. Like it handles all that for you.
Now, all my save games, all my games were automatically moved over. I don't even notice a difference. Like,
yep.
My Switch 1 is now a completely redundant and useless device. Yep. There is nothing the Switch...
Well, where the Switch 1 will be good for us is, I travel for work a lot. So I may bring one of the devices with me and the other devices at home because...
I'll probably just give my Switch 1 to someone in need or sell it.
Well, the other answer is we might leave the Switch 1 with Emily's dad, who is interested in these in games, because I feel like he might get excited about the Switch if we just have one there. The one thing you should watch out for, because people who aren't paying attention will fuck this up. You got to get a micro SD card, or you might eventually run out of space.
Micro SD card, which is not easy to get.
They're trivial to get. I just bought one, no trouble, not even marked up.
They were sold out, and I had to wait. And then
I looked. They were only sold out on like Amazon and Newegg. They were not sold out anywhere else. And SanDisk sells them direct. And they're not more expensive.
They were sold out on the SanDisk website when I tried to get one.
They absolutely were not. Well, what were you trying to get, like a terabyte one or something?
I was trying to, or I got one that's 256 because that basically doubles the storage because the internal storage is 256.
I also got a 256.
At the time that I was ordering it, they were sold out everywhere.
Yeah, but they were.
I put in a pre-order that basically when they got in stock, then they mailed me one.
But the deal is, if you don't know, SD cards have a lot of different formats and standards, and if you try to Google this, a lot of searching doesn't work anymore. You will probably buy the wrong SD card. It has to say EX. There's a little like stylized italics looking EX on it. If it does not have that, it says SDXC or any of these other things. That's bullshit. It has to say EX. And you'll know.
All the other symbols you can ignore. As long as it has the EX on it, it's good for the Switch 2. If it doesn't have the EX, it's not good for the Switch 2. All the other symbols don't matter.
Yep.
Ignore.
And a lot of the internet just lies and says Switch 2 compatible if you go to like a lot of websites. So don't just look for the EX. Nothing else matters.
Yep. But yeah, actually, I was surprised. The 256 was actually enough to hold all my Switch 1 stuff. I think I had a 128 gig SD card in my Switch 1.
Yep.
And I think I did fill the Switch 1 internal memory.
Oh, my internal memory was completely full, and the SD card was also like halfway full on the Switch 1.
Yeah, but after porting everything to Switch 2, actually there's nothing on the SD card. It's the 256 that's built into the Switch 2 is enough to hold everything, and then there's some extra space still for a little bit more. And the SD card, I'm sure, will get used eventually as I get more games.
Yeah.
But not yet.
So yeah, if you don't have any game console and you're looking for one, just buy the Switch 2. Otherwise, you're like, buy the Switch 2 at some point because it's going to be probably the best console for a very long time.
One last thing is that if you have Nintendo Online, the Switch 2 lets you play GameCube games, at which point there's only 3, which are Wind Waker and Soul Calibur 2 and F-Zero GX. And so if you haven't played any of those are all games that you should be playing.
Oh my God, I can't play Soul Calibur 2 without a GameCube controller. Like, my body is incapable.
You could buy... See, the thing is, I have GameCube controllers. I even upgraded and modified a GameCube controller to work wirelessly with a GameCube or a Wii. And I have a Wii. And so I could just play that. But they are selling a GameCube controller that works with the Switch, which the one I modified does not do. And it's like I bought the N64 one.
Yeah.
And I bought the NES one. I didn't buy the SNES one. That seems like unnecessary. But it's like, should I get to the GameCube one? It's like, I feel like I'm better off I'll just use my actual Wii.
I feel like if I worked hard, I could force myself to be able to play F-Zero and Soul Calibur 2 with the regular controller, but I'd have to like kind of relearn the game.
Yeah. That's the thing. The GameCube controller is so unique that trying to play it with any other controller, any of those games with a different controller is really kind of weird. They let you remap the buttons however you want, but...
F-Zero, we struggled a lot to play that.